Welcome to Corporate Baggage, where we will help you unpack, repack, and lighten the load. We're your hosts, Whitney Siders and Catie Campbell.
For nearly 40 years, we've been coaches, consultants, and leaders inside organizations and supporting global enterprises and Fortune 500 companies to help make those organizations strong and healthy.
If there's a hot topic in the workplace, you better believe we'll be unpacking it here. Topics like return to office, performance reviews, compensation. Nothing is off limits. Like, subscribe, follow us, and drop your baggage in the comments so we can unpack it together and lighten the load.
The only thing that should be in your bag is your paycheck.
Hi, Catie.
Hey, Whitney.
I got my uptime today.
I got my uptime.
I needed a little boost for this conversation. We're still talking about work-life balance, but what we haven't talked about, well, we've talked a little bit about this, but some routines and some of the mindset that really helps you continue to experiment within work-life balance. So because of the work that we do, we have the chance to meet and talk and coach leaders across all different industries and all different levels. So we have heard some really cool ways that people experiment with work-life balance, and I know we have too. So maybe we kick off a little bit starting with the mindset, because we've talked a lot about it starts with awareness. So what are some of the things maybe you've seen leaders do that have worked and not worked? Not routine yet, but in terms of just how they think about work-life balance.
Okay, so I do want to touch back on a previous episode where you really described home life as like a business or an operation, because I think one of the most difficult parts about setting a mindset of I need to get these things in balance is just that. It comes from a place of it's not in balance. Like most people don't go, it's a blank slate. And I just want to architect balance. You have to kind of wait until things get squeezed or you start to feel pressure in some way to then say it's out of balance. I need to get there. So first and foremost is the more you can take the emotional component out of it, which sounds counterintuitive for me because you know that I love talking about feelings and emotions, and that's a deep part of the coaching work that I do. But being able to look at your life almost in 3D or from an operational standpoint can allow you to make decisions about it that aren't necessarily going to feel like, well, if I don't do this, then that'll happen. Sometimes you have to make decisions that are difficult, and they do have an emotional component to it, but they're also necessary. Mm-hmm. So I think the first and foremost is the mindset of how do I make decisions that are the best and right ones to do, regardless of the emotion that follows it. There's going to be plenty of time to grieve or celebrate the decisions you make to create that balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it starts with that and kind of laying it out and saying what's possible. Because I think often people go into not just thinking about work-life balance, but a lot of things saying, this is the way it should be, or this is the way it's supposed to be. And I think we miss out then on the way that it could be, because we were just talking about this earlier. We're all kind of making it up. We're all figuring it out. We're making things up. We're experimenting. And what could it look like if? What might it look like if I decided that on Fridays I wasn't going to take any client meetings? That sounds crazy for a lot of people to think about, but I want to do that. And what is that helping me then do differently? I'm not just doing it to do it, but what's then it allowing me to do? Maybe it is a self-care day for myself. Maybe it is spending more creative time working on my business, or on, if I'm an employee at a larger corporation, maybe I'm taking Friday afternoons off, and that's a part of my contract so that I can work on a passion project of mine, or hobby, or volunteer, or something else that lights me up in a way that gives me energy.
So I think before we get into the total mindset, there's the step before, which is taking a whole step back and saying, I need to, it's not the mindset, it's the approach. It's the approach of curiosity.
Taking inventory.
It's the approach of openness, like what is possible. So that's what you said, what's possible, but it's openness. There's a lot of different possibilities of how this could play out and how it could go. Another piece of it, and it kind of fits with what's possible and curiosity, is things like, what haven't I tried? What seems impossible? Because it's important, I think, to like just lay out, well, I think this is possible, but my boss won't think it's possible. Or I think it's possible, but the company doesn't allow it.
I like to live in the not possible and then how to make it possible.
Right.
You know, I like that.
Right.
So it's like anything's on the table. What is your ideal state? And then worry about the how later. How do I make it possible?
So it might be that people just need to reverse engineer
and maybe
how
it
this
isn't,
works.
right. And then maybe at the end of the day, it isn't, but at least you've wired that out where maybe it isn't today, but it could be in the future. But you're at least thinking about what really is this ideal state and how can I make it happen?
Because there's so many people who I know are listening right now that will say, that's really nice for
And it's
you.
crazy.
And it's yeah, yes. It's really nice for you. It's crazy. And that wouldn't work for me. That's good for you. And I've heard this in lots of different contexts over the years, that it pops up and it always is a bit jarring because I feel like, well, if I figured this out, I am not the smartest person in the room. If I figured this out, somebody, you can figure this out too.
How hard can it be?
How hard can it be? Boys do it.
Yeah.
But it's this opposition that I get. So the openness is really important because of what I've experienced as opposition. So when I was not managing or leading people, I would get the whole, well, I can't do that because I have to write the performance reviews, right? The leaders or the managers would complain about different parts of their jobs. Like, that's great for you to go do happy hour. I have more work to do. Okay. When I, worked for a nonprofit, it's like, well, that must be nice, but I work for a for-profit and we have to answer to sales quotas, and you don't have to do that in a nonprofit. You're just like helping people and changing the world. Okay. So it changed into, it's morphed when you and I met. We were working in an organization that at the time, it was pre-COVID, but we had people who were working, we were geographically separated. So we had people all across the country, and people would say, well, that's really nice. You get to work from home, but I can't do that because my company is in X city. My company won't allow that. I get the same thing now sometimes from people that go, oh, well, you own your own businesses. You can make your own schedule. And there are a lot of times I think, yeah, but then I have clients that'll call me and they influence the schedule. And I have children that I have to take care of, willingly and lovingly take care of, but that influences what the schedule looks like. It's really easy to say it's easy for you, but for me, we all have that. And so really approaching this with this openness of what is possible or what do I think is impossible and how do we work backwards from that is super important, so that you really are playing with a full data set to make the decisions about how you want to shape your life.
And what it could look like and how to work towards that. Like, again, it might not be true today, but what needs to be true? This is a great question I love to ask when you're re-engineering some of that, which is, okay, what do I want it to look like? What might it look like? How could it look like? And what needs to be true in order for that to happen? Mm-hmm. And that might mean what needs to be true today for that to happen, what needs to be true in 3 months for that to happen. And maybe it is working towards it. There are going to be some things that, sure, you can make happen for you immediately. And we all know there are things that take a little bit to make happen. And so that then, back to the awareness and intention, it creates a plan for you, just like you would do when you're setting goals at work.
Yeah.
Just like when you're setting goals at work, or you're setting goals to lose weight, to eat better, to play better at whatever sport you're doing. You're doing that just like we're talking about running a household. You're running the household. So what do you want that ideal state to look like? Because I'm really tired of us meaning the world.
The world. No. Okay. Just the world.
Just the world. Just everyone in corporate America. Anyone that's working, really saying, all this stuff is happening to me. And they're playing. And I'm not, again, this isn't everyone. I know there are people who are doing this really well, but I hear this a lot. Well, I'm in meetings back to back all day. That feels victim-y. Like it's happening to me. I can't do anything about it. Oh, are you being forced to sit in that meeting? I get it. Maybe your CEO is asking you to sit in there and you can't say no. There are some meetings like that. But I guarantee you, if you look at your calendar, listeners, you look at your calendar, I don't know the percentage, but I'd guarantee that at least half of them, you'd be okay if you missed.
Oh, for sure. And quite frankly, you might not need to be in those meetings. And I think what we also know is there becomes a resentment to being in, just using that example.
And that's an example for many other things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a
real one.
It's not being intentional about how you're managing just your day-to-day calendar. So then that's what happens. Now, what we haven't talked about that I also think is an important element of creating the right mindset is once you have like all the data out there and so you're open to figuring out how to take all these Lego blocks and build the life that you want. Another piece of it is like, what are the trade-offs that you're willing to take? So for somebody who's in a meeting back to back to back all day, you might go, that's exhausting and that's terrible. And that doesn't seem imbalanced, but maybe they're doing that in service of a higher goal. So two of them I can think of is, a really good friend of mine is a newer small business owner. And she said and she's got 3 young children and said, when I started my business, one of the things I wanted to do was take off the month of July and spend it with my kids at the beach because their lives with all 3 of them are go, go, go the rest of the year. She and her husband are super busy and the kids have a full load too. So she said, that's what I want to be able to do. Now, would that mean she makes trade-offs on how hard she works the other 11 months of the year? Yeah, you bet. But she also knows that she's doing that in service of something that she wants even more, which is an extended vacation with her children. Another business owner that I know, he's the president of a company and he travels quite frequently for pleasure in addition to traveling for work. And I work with some of his employees and they have said, oh, it must be nice that so-and-so's off doing X, like fill in the blank for a trip or an event or a promotion. And I just think, yeah, but you're not up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes cramming in extra stuff to make sure that the workflow keeps happening. So he's figuring out his trade-off might be that he's like sleeping on the plane, but he's not sleeping some evenings or he's up late, like burning the midnight oil in service of him being able to take advantage of vacation time or opportunities, but he's also doing it in service of what he also wants and what he values, and which is taking care of his people. And so there's trade-offs. So it's the mindset, but it's really about openness to possibility, understanding what really is possible or impossible. I think there is like, what are you willing to give up or sacrifice? Because there has to be sacrifice in this somewhere. And in service of what? So I think a lot of this comes back down to values. So if family is your number one value, you're going to maybe sacrifice getting promoted as faster if it means you get to spend more time with your family. Or you might sacrifice building a relationship with a client after work at happy hour because you want to coach your kids' baseball team. And if that's the most thing that's important to you, then to me, I'm like, yeah, your life is in balance, not imbalanced.
Right. Yeah. And I think it takes back to understanding what that looks like for you, what that means, painting that out really clearly so that you're clear on it. But then in order to put that into action, here's where I see people fall down.
All right.
And myself included, is the boundaries around that. Mm-hmm. So I want to, let's play this example is I met with a leader, coach to leader who did this. I thought this was a great example. He was in a group. This was a leadership training. There was probably about 30 healthcare leaders in this group. And most of them were complaining, no surprise, about or sharing feedback, complaining a little bit.
You don't have to sugarcoat it.
Complaining a little bit about all of the meetings that they were in.
Right.
And how they were meeting up until 5:30, so that some of them, they even had hour to hour and a half commutes. Mm-hmm. So they weren't getting home till 7, 8 o'clock at night and then doing it all over the next day. And so this leader said, yeah, I hear all of you. And you know what I do? I don't take meetings after 3:30. Now, of course, there's exceptions to that rule. But his standard is, I don't take meetings after 3:30. That doesn't mean I leave at 3:30. That means I don't take meetings after 3:30, so that between 3:30 and 4:30, I'm shutting down the day. I'm making sure everything's in order. I'm clear on how I need to start my day tomorrow. And I'm allowing for a conversation that might happen, or getting to my car and making sure that I can get home in time where I can recharge. For him, that worked. That might be a different version for someone else that says, I need to leave at 3:30 because I need to pick up my kids, or I need to do X, Y, and Z, right? But that boundary was really clear for him versus the next person who said, oh, well, that's great. This happens, right? Exactly what you said, which is, and this happened in the training. That's great for you. This woman said this. That's great for you, but I can't do that. You know what my question to her was?
How come?
Right. Why? Did she have a good answer?
Doubtful.
No. The answer is always, well, I can't because so-and-so asked me for this, or I can't say no to this meeting. You can. You can. I think we forget that we have some choice in this.
It's the agency that people, I think sometimes it's the longer that we're in a system. That could be a family system, because I hear people say those kinds of things about, well, I can't say that because my mom will know, or my mom will hear that. It's like, you're an adult. Yes, you can. You can. There will be consequences. So, and I get that there are real and implied consequences to somebody saying that. And I know. So obviously you're telling the story and it's just like, oh, come on. Yes, you can. But you also have to have a lot of empathy too, that perhaps the system that she's grown up in professionally has made it to say, no, you don't say no to that. When somebody asks you to do something, the answer is yes. For some people, that's the role that they're in and they choose that. But for the most part, you can say no. You do have agency, but the culture, sometimes it's industry, but oftentimes it's the culture of an organization or a team that's really driving what people feel like is a real versus a perceived limitation to what they're able to do.
Well, and here's a little trick that I love in that. And there are always going to be exceptions. So listeners, if you're thinking about all the reasons why this won't work, drop them in the comments, share them with us. But one of the things I love doing in that, relating to the trade-offs, is so when someone says, can you do X, Y, and Z? And the answer in your head is no. So in this example that I gave, can you meet at 4 p.m.? For this person, the answer could have been no. Another scenario is yes, and something needs to be traded off. Or yes, I can meet with you and it has to be at 3. Or yes, I can meet with you and I can come in early tomorrow. Or yes, and this deadline is going to have to move back. What is the yes and trade something off? Everything can be yes, but there's a trade-off.
Right.
If you want to operate in the world of I don't like to say no, you could do that. But the answer is yes and or yes if. And that changes the emotion behind it. And it also comes from a place of let's collaborate, let's compromise versus no, I can't do that. That feels a lot better for people.
It does. So your example of like the executive who said, I don't take meetings after 3. So I typically do not schedule meetings after 3 because until my kids are old enough to drive themselves, I take off leader hat and I put on mom hat and I'm in the car with them. And it's just the way that the logistics work. It's at least an hour, to and from, and then if there's additional kid activities, it's longer than that. So it makes no sense to try and cram a meeting in there. However, business does not stop at 3 p.m. local time. And other people have questions. They need to keep the things moving. So the compromise is exactly what I do, but I don't do it for everyone. So for example, if you said, hey, I need to talk to you about something, I'm like, why are you asking? Just call me.
Yeah.
But the answer is going to be yes. If it is somebody who I don't know, I don't owe anything to at the moment, like there's not a hold up in me saying, me not moving the work along, I try and make sure that they have access to me, but not everybody does. So some people I'll just go, no, I'm not free until tomorrow morning. I'm not free. Or here's a link to my Calendly so you can get onto. Shout out to Calendly for keeping my life in order. I mean, it's like, honestly, like that is one way of just saying, here, you can find time, but right now I can't. This isn't a good time to talk. Or I can talk to you. It'll be on the phone and I can't take notes. Or grab an AI tool to take notes for us because I will not be able to write anything down because I'm driving. So if they want to talk to me that way and that's helpful to move things along, great. But it's like you're talking about negotiation is important. It's the yes and or yes if, but here's the new conditions of how it's going to work. And then the rest of the time, it's just no. Because by the time, this is the way I work, by the time we get to that time of day, this is not the time to start up a new project or anything like that. This is the time to be starting to wrap things up, synthesize, and put things to bed so I can transition into the other part of my family life.
That makes me think about we talk a lot here about awareness, and you talked about, I'm not best in the afternoon. I'm also not best in the afternoon. I do my best work in the morning.
That's right.
And there are people who do their best creative work at night. I'm talking like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And so knowing that about yourself and then wiring your schedule around that and letting other people know that is really important. There's a great book by Dan Pink. I think it's called When. Yes. About that, to understand a little bit more about how you operate and helping nail that down. And I think, so yes, you could create that, but the second factor I mentioned was, how do you communicate that with others? So you don't want to put your working schedule onto others. So let's just say, actually, I'll share this. I worked with someone who she did her best work at night, creative work, would pull all-nighters with it. Great. That's great for her. But she didn't expect that of others. And so when she would send messages, whether it was Slack or email, she would either schedule to send it, or, which is one way, or I've seen other leaders, this person didn't do this, but I've seen other leaders put in their email, I work my best hours between X and X. This doesn't mean that you need to reply.
Right.
I'm not, or in the body. And I've actually seen leaders put that in their signature. Like CEOs.
Yep.
But I've also seen people put it in the body of the email, as in, please get to this tomorrow. I'm just sending it now. I'm not expecting a response. But the point is being very clear about that, because otherwise the assumption is going to be whatever the cultural assumption is, which is sometimes not what you want it to be or what you're aspiring for it to be.
You're so funny. I just sent out a group of emails to about 25 different women that were on a retreat with me, and I scheduled to send at the exact same time for like the following morning at like 8 o'clock in the morning or something like that, simply because I was doing it at 11 o'clock at night, but that was because that's when I had planned to do it. I had some time, was just working through some stuff, but I don't, there's an implication to, why is she doing this at 11 o'clock at night? Oh my gosh. And when it came in super late, and I don't want anybody to carry any, we talked about mental load in a previous episode. I don't want anyone to carry any thoughts about that at all. But what you're hitting on, though, really, I think, kind of segues us into talking about routines, because the key to being able to not have it all and not have everything in balance magically.
Not all at once. You can have it all, but not all at once. Catie.
Okay, you sound like my mom now, which is not a bad thing. She's right and you're right. But
hey, Candy.
You can't have it all. But what you can have is an operating system for yourself. And so again, I always talk about this stuff like it's like not emotional, but I feel like putting the pieces into place help before you get into the emotional component of, does this feel right? Does this feel in balance? It's like, what are the things that I need to be doing to get the results that I'm looking for? So how have you thought about your routines, or what have you done historically to make it so that you feel like you're getting a sense of balance between all of the things that you do in life, that includes work, and what do you do when it needs to be changed? Like, how do you know when it needs to be changed?
Such a good question. So I'll shout out to one book too that I'm just thinking about before I forget, a good carry-on essential to add to your list.
Oh yeah.
So we mentioned extreme ownership in a previous episode, Essential and When by Dan Pink. So add that to your list. And then also Essentialism.
It's one of the best books.
A great book. And there's a great story in there that speaks to the example we just gave around an executive not attending meetings. And at first, there was a lot of backlash and judgment. And then later on, just a quick version of the story, Cliff Notes version, is that as he continued to do that, he actually performed better than anyone else and was much more respected than any of the other executives on the team, because he was standing his ground and getting shit done because he wasn't attending those meetings. So it's the old adage of, it might not feel right at first, but keep going. And that was a really good story in there. So just put that to the side on your carry-on essentials list. So back to the routines. I think it starts with zooming all the way out. So, and this is how I think about routines when it comes to work-life balance. It's not just a week to week, day to day, month to month. You really have to think about, and you could do this at any time. It doesn't have to be the new year, but people tend to do it at the new year, which is coming up, which is great for everyone. Look back on the year that you've had. What worked for you? What didn't? What got in your way? Then look ahead. What do you want it to look like? Like we talked about earlier.
Yep.
What are the things that I want to experience? Now, this is work and personal. This could be vacations. This can be, for me, this is just me personally. I know that I need some sort of getaway once a quarter.
It's like something to look forward to.
I need some sort of vacation where I'm unplugging, not a long weekend, maybe like sometimes a long weekend if I can't squeeze it in, but like a 4 to 5 day or maybe a week, like every quarter, getting away. I know that's not always possible, but that's what I strive for. So I try and build that into my year. So you can see where I'm going is what are those lists of things? What are the things I want to experience? What are the things I want to learn? Who are the people I want to meet? What do I want to accomplish?
Yeah.
Those types of questions. And then I re-engineer that. What would that then look like? Okay, well, what would my systems need to look like to support that? So that means if we're just talking about vacations, well, I need to think about childcare. Well, I need to plan my projects that I'm taking on in a way that I'm not scheduling big milestones around those times.
Right.
Right? The little things that you're backing into, and then you back into your week, your months, your weeks. Okay, how do I really want my weeks to feel? And then that's where we get into, I talked about this in another episode, is for my family dynamic, I'm talking with my husband weekly about the week ahead. So for some people, that means Fridays they're doing it. We do it on Sundays where we say, okay, this is what we have for this upcoming week. And then I also do that for work. So I'm backing into, okay, these are the things that I have. I really do it for 2 weeks. So I can then back in and chunk things off on my calendar, because otherwise things happen to me versus me being proactive in doing that. So there's a couple different things, but I think the lesson in all of that is really thinking about the macro first and then getting into it.
That makes a lot of sense. And I have a guide that I created a couple of years ago that I update every year. We'll link it in the show notes. It's designed for goal setting, but it really does encapsulate a lot of what you're talking about, because it could be that you're listening to this and saying, yeah, I need to get things in balance. And same girl, same. Like everybody needs to. But it's not just about like, I need to, but the how do I, and really that zooming out and taking that 12-month perspective of like, what the heck has happened really can be instrumental in figuring out then what is it that I really want. And in that pursuit of what is it that I really want, as you just mentioned, you have to back engineer then what are all the different inputs and things that I need to be doing on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis to get, to make that all happen. So we'll link that in the show notes too, along with all the different books that you mentioned as well, because those are some of my favorites too. The other piece of it that the other thing that I think is really important is getting out of this mindset of, well, this is what I should do. Like, well, I should. This is great. And to be more in balance, I should work out more. Or to be more in balance, I should get back into yoga. To be more in balance, I should do some more professional development. And so I hear people shoulding all over themselves constantly. And really leaders struggle with this a ton. Believe it or not, like that's where I hear it the most is they have these unreasonable expectations of what they should be doing and not understanding how to fit it all in. And so when you were talking about, sort of reverse engineering, putting things on your calendar, and that's how you build things in so things don't happen to you. Another big component is having a list, and maybe you do this when you're doing the goal setting guide, but really having a list of all the things that you say to yourself, I should do more of that. So most recently, I was working with a group of women, and it was, I should meditate more. I should get more massages. I should get back into yoga. I should work out more. I should get more sleep. And it's like, stop. This can be a binary. Either you do it or you don't. So like nobody really like kind of has a meditation practice. You either have one or you don't. Nobody really just kind of sort of gets good sleep. You either get good sleep or you don't. And
that can ebb and flow.
It does ebb and flow. It absolutely does. But it's really easy to look at people who have what seems like they get all their stuff together and everything is in balance. Those people didn't just magically happen upon that calendar and that life. It is 9 times out of 10 extraordinarily planful, like you talked about. It is a practice. It is a practice, just like
I don't always get it right.
No,
never.
No,
and the biggest judger of that is yourself.
Yeah,
because when you're thinking all of those shoulds, I mean, I still struggle with this too all the time. Is the shoulds? Well, what will this person think, or this? Let them think. Let them say. What's helpful for you? And once you can really let go of that it's so freeing and it's so helpful, because I guarantee you, not as many people are judging you as you think.
No. Okay.
They'd actually care less about you than you think.
It's so true. Can I tell you a story
Yes.
about the first executive coach that I worked with? She absolutely changed my life because she opened my eyes to what this work really is as an executive coach. And I got hooked. And then of course, eventually
we are.
Got certified to be able to do it. So my coach, her name's Judy Nelson. She's based out on the West Coast. She is phenomenal. If you ever have the chance to meet her or get to work with her, she's one of the best of the best. And I remember as a very junior executive, talking to her, this is also when I was a new mom, talking with her about feeling like there's no way I could get everything done that I thought I needed to do. I thought that people were judging me based on my ability to get all those things done. And I kept looking at everybody else and thinking, how did you figure this out? I mean, I'm intelligent enough. How come I can't figure this out too? How do you seem to have your life together? And I feel like I am just barely knitting it together on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. And so she said, there is a skill part of it. And what we were talking about with the goal setting guide and really like manually configuring your calendar so that things aren't happening to you is a big piece of it, a tactical piece of it. And it's necessary, essential we do this all the time. But she said, and I had never met her in person up until then. So we were doing this all over Zoom, like 15 years ago. It was crazy. She says, Catie, do you know what's in my bathtub? I said, no. I mean, it's a weird question, right? Like, no, because I've never been to her house before. And I said, no. And she said, if you came to my house, you'd see the house is in order. Everything is squared away. And she was always this woman that had like, her outfits were done and her hair was done and she had the scarf that just went like so. And she was just really put together. And I said, no, I don't know what's in your bathroom or your bathtub. And she said, it's all the laundry that I took out of the dryer and I just dumped it in the bathtub. And I said, okay. And she's like, but that's usually where it is. And she said, sometimes it gets folded. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we just pull something out of it and go, we'll iron that and move on. If you met she and her husband, you'd go, no, she's not a clean laundry in the bathtub kind of lady. She absolutely was. And she said, and she's like, from now on, I want you to picture every person that you think has their life so put together as somebody who also has laundry in their bathtub. And it sounds like such a goofy example, but that example changed my life. And it's something that I remember every time I see somebody and go, how do they have it all figured out? I'm like, they don't. They probably have an outstanding tax bill, or they've got a septic issue that's just about to percolate they should be paying attention to, or they've got some other kind of a struggle or thing that you go, well, that's not all tidied up. That's not squared away. So it's not the goal is not perfection in any of this. And the person who is going to judge yourself the hardest is you. And really, I mean, I think aside from admiring how somebody else has things in balance, nobody's really looking at what you're doing and saying, wow, their life is a total hot mess, because usually it's their life is a total hot. It's the same. Yeah.
So yeah, it really is about just figuring out what's going to work for you and remembering that it's all made up. And even the timing, like when I get worried about, oh my gosh, I have to finish this, and this today. And oh my God, I totally forgot about this personal thing that I need to do. I remind myself that, oh wait, it's still going to be there tomorrow. Or can I move the deadline because it's a made up deadline? Sure. Maybe not. But being able to have that flexibility and create what works for you and experiment with it. And you asked earlier, how do I know when I'm out of balance? There are certain things for me that I notice before it gets to the extreme that I say, wait, I need to take a step back. And for me, It's when I'm being short with people, when I might be not taking as much time that I need for my physical health, or things like, or I'm not getting enough sleep. Those are signals for me to say, okay, wait, I need to take a step back and do a little reset, because you could do a reset at any point. And that just needs to be a part of your practice, that you could do a reset at any point. But I think it's the awareness, the intention, and the definition, because what success or balance looks like to you, that expectation is what you're measuring up against.
Yeah.
So if success for me is a number, I'm going to be let down a lot. But if success for me is trying these things, doing these things, experiencing these things, that's a little bit different.
I love it. Whitney, I think this one's in the bag.
Is it in the bag today?
It's in the bag.
For now.
For now. This will come up again.
Yeah. Zip it up. Thanks for listening. If you have some corporate baggage you want to unpack, or something you took away from the conversation, drop it in the comments.
Find our social links in the description. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share these episodes.